the Qatari government temporarily closing its airspace this evening ahead of what was anticipated in terms of a barrage of missiles possibly coming in from Iran in retaliation, basically trying to strike the US airbase that's based just outside the Qatari capital, Doha, this evening. Qatar says that it's basically closed the airspace for the safety of citizens and visitors. The Americans and the United Kingdom have now told their nationals who are in Qatar to shelter in place until further notice. Let's have a look at what this means for travellers now. Bring in Desmond Latham, an aviation expert. And Desmond, this is by no means a small matter, right, when you consider just the volumes of people who go through Hamad International Airport in Doha daily.
Yeah, well, to put the numbers there, 870,000 go through every week. And there are 35 flights to and from South Africa every week, 18 to Joburg, 12 to Cape Town, 5 to Durban. So immediately, I mean, we can see that the effect of it's going to be pretty immediate. We're talking about tens of thousands of people to hundreds of thousands of people over the next few hours are going to be affected by this. So it's going to cause chaos, really.
And let's talk about what you describe as chaos. What would that look like, for example, at an OR Tambo, at King Shaka International in Durban, and even in Cape Town?
Well, from what I hear, people have already received warnings not to go to the airport. But many people wouldn't have got those, and some take connecting flights. And of course, we're a large country. People have driven to Johannesburg or Cape Town or Durban from the rural areas, from isolated places, and now they'll have to make alternative arrangements. So I think that's the first thing. But secondly is that the flights themselves start backing up quite quickly, as you can imagine. The Middle East is entrepot, both Emirates through UAE and through Dubai, and Qatar through Doha. They are entrepôts. In other words, they're central points through which most or many flights travel east to west. So a lot of people from Southeast Asia and Asia going to Europe or America or travel via Doha and via Dubai. And I think that Dubai is also going to be affected by this. It has been affected. Emirates and others have been affected already. They've been diverting flights around the airspace of Israel and Iran for some time now. If you look at some of the radar systems we have to track these things, you can see it's quite amazing. There's like an empty area in that part of the world. So there's been a decision to protect passengers, to deviate and to change course and so on. But now shutting down the whole airport is going to have significant losses for people. The cost will ratchet up.
I'll come back to Doha specifically in a moment, but more broadly, Desmond, how safe is it for anyone to fly through the Middle East at the moment?
Well, it's been fairly safe for some time because the operators always fly with safety in mind. So they have diverted flights away from Israel and Iran for some time now, as I said. But my personal opinion is that I've tried to avoid flying via the Middle East now, really since the October 7th attacks on Israel, because the likelihood of an escalation of conflict from then on has been in place. And it's 2 years later almost, and we have seen how that escalation has taken place. People have got used to flying Emirates and Qatar because it's cheap. And I've been flying direct routes as much as possible around the world. It's more expensive, but if you plan it, it can be cheaper actually than Emirates and Qatar if you plan your operations properly. So personally, I've been trying to avoid that airspace. But people don't have the luxury I have of planning ahead up to 6 months. They need to fly in 3 months. They have visas. They buy the ticket. Next minute, you fly to Doha, you wait at the airport. If you're flying to parts of the US, it's a 24-hour flight in total, and so on. But it's priced at 25,000 rand, which is feasible. Now flights for us are going to ratchet up significantly after this. So that's my long answer, is to say I've been trying to personally avoid the Middle East for at least a year, more like 2 years now.
You said you expect flight prices to go up. Is that solely dependent, Desmond, on how long the Iran-Israel situation in particular continues? Because as we understand it, even the attack on Al Udeid, the military base in Qatar tonight, is directly linked to that particular conflict in the Middle East.
There are a lot of speculation in here, but I do scenario planning. And the scenarios, as I've said, have looked bad for over a year. So this doesn't surprise me what's happening at the moment. So the short answer is yes, prices are going to go up because this is not going to resolve itself. If you look at the geopolitics of the moment, The Israelis have decided they're going to go to war with Iran. The Americans have now decided they're going to join. That's going to tie in other countries. It's going to cause an escalation in prices of fuel. The last time I remember this happening of this extent, and I don't know if I can say this, but in 1981-82, the Iran-Iraq war, this is the last time I saw something of this significance that has the capacity to shut down world oil.
Right.
If the Iranians shut down the Straits of Hormuz, that's 10% of the world's oil will not travel. And I remember we had a 6 to 6 curfew back in the day, in 1982, for example, because we couldn't buy oil, not just because of apartheid, but also because we just couldn't get it. And I fear, looking at the scenario planning that we're looking at the moment, we don't buy from Iran because they're sanctioned, but it's going to impact the Brent crude price. Already the price of oil has been vacillating, but after this attack, it's definitely going to rise. So that factors into our ticket prices, of course.
And that's going to affect not just air travel. Even if you're driving or moving goods, you might also see a trickle-down effect in pricing.
I think you can say with some certainty now, all the analysis is pointing towards the fact that oil prices have already risen 6% in a week, and it's going to go up more. It's, as I said, it's changed a little over the last 48 hours. But if you look at if you stand back from the story and try and approach it neutrally and dispassionately, understand what's going on, yes, strong likelihood. So for us travelers, air travelers, the impact it's going to have is that there'll be 35 fewer flights going to Doha Airport, and people are going to switch to Emirates. But Dubai is very much in the same part of the world, and they may be affected. You know, there are over 30 American and NATO bases around there, like there are Russian and Chinese bases in the Middle East. And if the Iranians wanted to attack the American bases, I mean, they're much closer than Israel to Iran. They're next door to them, really, in Iraq. They're in Djibouti and so on. So there's the likelihood of this escalating quite quickly is good now, because we were imagining that perhaps Iran would just take it on the chin, the attacks on their nuclear facilities. Unlikely. But now that they've decided to up the ante, a lot of those airports that rely on the entrepot kind of flights east-west in the Middle East are going to be impacted by this, no question about it.
And how responsive is the aviation industry? By that I mean the airlines themselves and the airports of the world. Because like we're saying, the Hamad Airport in Doha sits at the center of much of international travel. So now that people will either be stuck at Hamad, be stuck at places like Tambo, for example, if you're leaving New York, coming back to South Africa, and you had a layover period there, you might also be affected. What is the responsibility on the carriers now to the passengers?
Yeah, good question. I mean, Hamad takes around 765 flights a day. So already we're looking at, if it's a 24-hour shutdown, which I think it will have to be, we're looking at close to 1,800 flights. That's multiplied by 200 to 300 per airliner that you're flying. You start looking at those numbers. So the impact is significant straight away. You cannot easily shift these tickets because most of the planes fly on volume of passengers, and they try and fill up as much as possible. So it's going to be very hard for ticket holders to shift from Qatar to somewhere else at such short notice. It's feasible, but it's going to be very difficult. That's why I always advise people, if you have an opportunity, always buy ticket insurance. Because if you don't buy ticket insurance, the airline, by law, internationally, doesn't have to honor the ticket. I don't think people will realize that. But if you buy ticket insurance, which is, it's not a little bit, but it's 70 Rand to 100 Rand a ticket, it saves you in this situation where you're guessing against fate. The airline has to give you another ticket. So that's the important message here, is that, folks, if you are going to book airline tickets anywhere, locally and internationally, always buy the ticket insurance.
And what then becomes of the recovery period if there is indeed a shutdown at Hamad for 24 hours? Let's say in the best case scenario, more than 1,000 flights, you were saying, I think, Desmond, landing through that airport daily. How long will recovery take? And is it as easy as people just now booking with other carriers if, for example, you were only going to lay over in Doha? How much seat space is even available on direct flights?
Well, there's 765 flights a day, so I'm just extrapolating over a 2-day period. But your point remains is that they can't recover within a week. It takes weeks sometimes to recover from something like this. Yes, other airlines will fly in and pick up the slack, but you've got to understand how the model works with people like Qatar Airlines. They are flying people, vast majority are not their citizens. 90% are not their citizens, flying them into their country to fly them out somewhere else. You never leave the airport. Like in Dubai, if you fly by Dubai, you get in the airport, you wait, and you take another flight. Now you're going to have hundreds, thousands of people stuck at that airport who, they need service, they need food, they need access to funds. It's going to be really discomforting for those people. And to get them onto other flights is impossible because you cannot fly out of Hamad. It's shut down. So they're going to be looking at other things. This happened in Tel Aviv, for example, about 2 weeks ago, where they shut down Tel Aviv airport when the Iranians fired back at the Israelis, the missiles. They shut down Tel Aviv airport, and people were taking buses, and they were taking ships, believe it or not. So you're going to start seeing people looking for ships to take them across probably the bottom end of the Red Sea, to take them in maybe to Ethiopia. These kind of things start happening. What we're speculating on really is how long will this exchange of fire with the Americans and Iranians take place? We don't know. But the scenario, as I painted to you and that I've been looking at for some time now, indicates that this is not going to be a short-term thing. And that's why I said to you, it reminds me of 81, 82, especially 82, where the world basically ran out of oil. And, South Africa, our speed limit dropped from 120 to 100 to save fuel, and you had to have a special license to buy fuel after 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. You can imagine how that's going to impact us. Now, I don't want to over-theatricize or dramatize the situation, but I'm stressing here that the scenario that we've looked at is negative for the medium and long term. We don't think this is going to be a short-term exchange of missiles, and Iran will say, okay, let's go and talk peace, or Israel and America and Iran. We don't think that that's a scenario, which means that the Middle Eastern airports are in high risk at the moment and will not become low risk very quickly.
Desmond Latham, good to talk to you, aviation expert, speaking to us about the closure of Qatar Airspace, the Doha airport, Hamad International Airport, a huge transit point affected as a result. We don't know how long the closure of Qatar Airspace will continue for, so many people, including South Africans, will likely be stuck at that airport or on opposite ends if they were going to be there for layover periods in the next few hours. Desmond, thank you so much for being on The Full View this evening.